Y'all might be a little late on that whole gender bending craze there. We opened this week on the happy Majora moon, though something just as terrifying as the normal one was in the air. That was legitimately one of the most spine-chilling laughs I've ever heard in my entire life. And I don't even mean in like the sort of cool Joker sort of way, more like... Ugh. Thankfully, the episode proper was far more mundane, with the Frog Witch trying to outrun her singing bill collector. Of course it didn't work, and some tea and cake weren't going to make Majorika's depths go away. However, Della gave her a chance to overcome them through a few games of draw poker.
Draw poker, huh? How's that? Do I win?
And the magical amphibian actually managed to get off her depths and even earn a low on the side. Damn, you should take those skills with you to Vegas. But, yeah, okay, this is an interesting development that might even lead into the Ojamajo progressing with their witches training even more and...
Hit me.
21.
Hit me. Hit me.
That's 30.
Hit me.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, she went straight back to square one, owing just as much as she did before. However, Della did offer to go one last round, but Majorika would have to ante up the Mahodo itself. Wait, I'm sorry, I was just under the impression that shops in Magical Girl anime didn't need stuff like licenses or deeds. And to absolutely no one's surprise, she lost and Ojamajo learned this the next morning. Yeah, because that was a victory y'all totally earned. Anyway, it didn't take Della long before she sold the shop to a new owner who just so happened to be Majorika's rival, Majoruka. Like seriously, considering that Majo means witch in Japanese, is that like the surname equivalent to Smith for them, and why? Of course, going by that cold opener, we could tell both her and her gal fairy Hehe were beyond obnoxious and ear-bleeding. And now she had acquired the one thing that gave Majorika the biggest advantage over her. Because, as it turned out, the Mahodo's previous owner was in fact the current queen, so naturally that sort of prestige made the shop quite the commodity like the home of a former president. Thus, the ownership of such a property could only be decided through, random lottery. Well, to be fair, it's not that much different than real life politics. Anyway, since they were now homeless, Majorika and Lala needed a place to crash, so of course they went with our title character and put up a really damn good argument why she had to do it. They ended up setting up base in Doremi's desk drawer, all the while avoiding detection from her mother and sister. Maybe you should give Light Yagami a call. I'm sure he'll be able to set you up with a pretty sweet and secure desk. It might blow up in your face, but it'll be secure. At the same time, Majoruka began renovations of her own. What, no love for the hamsters and squirrels? Don't misuse that line! Oh, so why were they already wearing a collar and a bow before she transformed them? Was that something the Ojamajo put on them? Because that's not sanitary. The next day, Reiko showed off a new charm she bought from the original Mahodo. Yeah, they also changed the name a little in order to get some cheap buzz. Because really, with the oversaturation of remakes these days, I think everyone is just going back to the originals. This is the world you have created, Hollywood. Anyway, the Ojamajo infiltrated the shop, and understandably, they weren't fans of how gaudy Majoruka had remodeled their precious shop. Speaking of whom, their disguises didn't fool the actual witch, who also managed to sell a charm to, Doremi. Of course, it actually turned out to be a bad luck charm, and I'm just going to assume this shop runs on an all-sales final policy because they always do. Later, after witnessing Majorika seemingly give up on her loss with a little help from Jack, Doremi realized that wasn't exactly the case. Majorika did indeed miss her shop, and in a really good moment for our title character, she acknowledged her plight. For me, I think this show has been needing a scene like this for Majorika for a long while. Ever since the beginning of the series, she's been kind of a one-dimensional jerk-off, often belittling the Ojamajo, even though they're kind of the key to turning her back to normal. Yes, her current situation was because of Doremi, but as I said, she certainly didn't do a great job hiding her true identity with a creepy shop that even Majoruka knew should at least look somewhat appealing. This feels like an even bigger reality check for her than being turned into a frog. She got too caught up in her old ways and ego, and now she had to face the music. A great moment that was unfortunately soured by these three stooges. I pray that you three bought the most unluckiest items in the whole shop. And yes, I watched ahead, so I know what's coming, and I have my popcorn ready. Fortunately, Masaru kind of balanced things out by being one of the few boys in this class who wasn't ear-gratingly annoying. He was also one of the few in the whole school who didn't buy any of the new charms because he's a little nonconformist and also pretty smart, again, as we'd see next week. Moreover, Doremi got a new idea, likely as a result of her little excursion the previous night. They were going to take an abandoned van that just so happened to be outside the Mahodo and repurpose it into a mobile shop. I won't call this an overly convenient plot point or anything. I just wonder, how long has that van been out there in a residential area, and if the same county were planning on doing anything about it? And in a somewhat callback to the original restoration of the Mahodo, the Ojamajo montaged their way through refurbishing the van. Good thing they had Hazuki's credit card to provide all the supplies they needed. And eventually, they revealed it to Majorika, who of course tried to downplay her gratitude. Wouldn't there be copyright issues with that? I mean, legally speaking, doesn't Majiruka currently own that name since she has the deed and license and therefore could probably file a CND? I mean, usually I wouldn't bring in all this legal jargon into a show like this, but once you introduce stuff like property ownership, you are kind of opening the floodgates to this sort of stuff. In fact, wouldn't they still kind of need a business license in order for their revenue to count towards being exchangeable with the Witch's World, considering what was established back in episode 5?
The answer is don't think about it.
Well, possible lawsuits aside, this was a nice scene as Majorika provided them with some new wheels, a driver, and I'm assuming a new motor because this isn't Jurassic World. With that, the episode ended with our heroines handing out flyers for their new unlicensed business, but if the city's not gonna deal with abandoned vans, they probably won't mind Myers working out of one. It took a little while, but now we're starting an actual story arc with significant conflict. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't really mind that this show was mostly just a slice of life show with no real antagonists other than maybe that cat, but it's nice to see them changing things up here. During some interesting world building and some character development from Majorika, and you've got my attention. One significant flaw I've noticed with the first season of this franchise is how the actual full-fledged witches were some of the most uninteresting characters in my opinion. I mean, I get that they would want to focus more on the trainees, but the characterizations of the witches have ranged from abusive jerks like Majorika to lazy jerks like the Motas. Thus, adding in the new dynamic of rivalries is a much appreciated change-up. Ear-grating laugh aside, Majorika has been a solid antagonist, literally swooping in and taking what our protagonists held most dear to them. As a result, we also finally got to see Majorika being something more than just a grumpy old witch. She clearly cared about her shop, and while that did stop her from betting it, she did at least realize how much she had taken it for granted. The Mahodo itself also got some interesting lore to it. I mean, I still think it's kind of dumb that it was just kind of handed out based on a lottery, but whatever. We also got to see the intros of deeds and licenses in this universe, which I do find interesting. Most of all, we got to see Doremi showing more of her sensible side when she decided to back off discussing the Mahodo with Majorika until the time was right. Overall, this was a solid start to one of the most significant arcs of this first season. I'm just about done with part 2 of my Symphogear Axis review, so I'll shoot for a Thursday or Friday release. I actually thought between Thanksgiving and the non-stop Precure announcements that it was going to be delayed a little more, but I think I managed to make a nice and concise review that all of you can enjoy. After that, I'm going to start work on a new multi-part project that will introduce some new subjects to this channel. I'll talk about it a little more at the end of the Symphogear review, so look forward to that as my little surprise. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and hold on. Hello? Oh yeah, I called about that van you were selling, so where can I pick it up from? Eh? Down by the where?